Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's Wednesday. It's May 31st. It's 2023. We have 7 baseball games that we're going to talk about here on today's podcast. We got a 7-game main slate on FanDuel, 6-game main slate on DraftKings. If you want some early MLB stuff for the 7-game early 1 p.m. slate, Dean and I will be on Grinders Live at 11:30 on RotoGrinders YouTube page and the Grinders Live page on the RotoGrinders website. So if you're looking for some early stuff, I figured that would be a good thing to check that out. Honestly, it's more of because we're just going to cover the late slate because I am on that show. So my thoughts will be there. So joined today by the commish. What's happening, Nick?
Life is good, man. Appreciate you having me back on.
Yeah, man, I'm back too. I've been gone, I feel like forever. I wasn't here Friday for the podcast or Monday or Tuesday. Thank you, everybody in chat saying welcome back. It was a long weekend in Charlotte. It would not stop raining. I got tilted many times throughout that weekend in the race and both races. Truck race was really good. Had a really good truck race, but yeah, so excited to be back. As always, thank you all for hanging out with us over there on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind YouTube page. That way you can find out when we're live. Hit the subscribe button. Turn on that notifications. Hit the like. Help us out. All that fun jazz housekeeping done. Let's talk baseball. I haven't talked baseball in almost a week. So I'm very excited to get back on the baseball grind. And, I mean, this is a fun slate to do it on. So let's get started. We got Snell and Garrett facing off against each other. Padres, Marlins, 8.5 total in this game. The Padres, a 132 favorite here. Any interest in Blake Snell? FanDuel only.
No, mostly just because, I don't know, the Marlins are about league average. They're 15th again in strikeout percentage in the month of May against left-handed pitching. Blake Snell, not typically a safe bet to get deep into games. He's gotten through 6 innings a few times this season, but most often getting pulled after 5 or earlier. For me, there's not enough swing and miss potential to take a leap of faith on Blake Snell here. The Marlins have been moderately competent in these situations, so for me, it's a pass, especially at the price tag at $9K.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have some really good pitching options on this slate and on FanDuel. I don't want to say you can't take shots on Snell because he is Blake Snell. He's, I mean, a guy that can get you a big game, or he's a guy that can go out and just struggle. So if you're playing tournaments, maybe you take some shots on him. He's not my favorite. I'm definitely not playing Garrett at 8,600 on DK. Like San Diego, they're a team that has been all over the place against left-handed pitching this season, but we know the talent that this lineup has just in general. I mean, this game is in Miami, which makes me a little, like I said, makes me like Snell a little bit for large field tournaments. But Garrett, I think he's going to be solid. He's a guy that his xFIP is low, his walk rate's low, the strikeout rate's just decent. I really think that like he's gonna need to continue to develop the cutter. It's getting smashed, and he really needs to develop the cutter to get right-handed hitters out more. I think this lineup's too good. I'm out on Garrett today.
I'm not as down on Garrett. I think the biggest thing with him is he's pretty hit or miss whether or not we're gonna see him pound the strike zone. You can see his last 4 starts, first pitch strike percentage 58%, 70%, 90%, and then 36%. I mean, he's a guy like anyone else in Major League Baseball. You're better off working ahead than you are behind in the count. He's got some upside. You look at his last 4 starts. I know not against the best competition in the world, but 29% K rate, 1.06 walk. I think there's some upside here. I think I'd rather have Braxton Garrett at 8,600 than Snell at 9, but maybe that's a personal bias against Blake Snell. He's not my type of pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup, I just think, like, when you're looking at a Miami lineup, you're much more confident about a pitcher against the Miami lineup than you are confident against going up against the San Diego lineup. And I think, like, realistically, at the end of the day, both pitchers have 40-plus upside. Do I end up on either pitcher on FanDuel? Probably not. I mean, that's just being honest. So, looking at San Diego bats against Garrett, I mean, obviously Tatis just continues to be fantastic against lefties. I think he's fantastic. So if you want to take some shots on him, Xander Bogaerts' numbers are down against left-handed pitching this season. So I really like Tatis for sure. Like, not second guessing that. I think a guy like Kim is really interesting. He's good against left-handers. He doesn't strike out at a very high clip. So I don't mind getting some exposure to him. And then on FanDuel, being able to play 2 first basemen, I don't hate taking a shot here on Brandon Dixon. It's a small sample size, but he does have some power against left-handed pitching. He's 2,200. So, like, if you are wanting to save some money here, he has been hitting the ball really well recently. I know he had a really good series against Washington and New York. So, if you want to take some shots on Brandon Dixon cheap, I don't mind it. Probably not full stack in San Diego. They'd be more of a one-off or a mini stack with like 2 people over on FanDuel for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you on Tatis. I think it's the obvious choice. OPS over 1,000 against left-handed pitching. Wouldn't talk you off of Kim either. I think if you're looking for a Miami bat in this one, I think Brian De La Cruz 2,800 makes a little bit of sense. He's a guy that I like a lot. I think he made some mechanical adjustments second half of last season that he's been a little inconsistent with so far in 2023. But 784 OPS against left-handed pitching, solid line drive rate. I think this is a guy at that price tag has a decent amount of upside.
Let's go to the Miami side. I mean, honestly, they're not the worst team in baseball against left-handed pitching. If we look at their overall season numbers, they're 5th in WRC plus, decent strikeout rate. They just don't have a ton of power. And I mean, this game is in Miami. It'd be interesting to see if they open the ballpark here with it being a 6:40 game. I mean, afternoon showers are always a concern. It is getting hotter in Florida. We're running out of like days where you can actually play with the roof open. Listen, I think Soler is one of the top hitters on the slate. Ballpark doesn't matter. This guy, 630 ISO against left-handed pitching this season, 60% fly balls and 47% hard hits. So Soler, top option for me on Miami. He's 3,800. It's not hard to fit a 3,800 bat in. I mean, do you have any other Miami bat that you like here? Because I'm assuming you're on Soler as well.
Yeah, I mean, OPS at almost 1,500, ISO over 600. He honestly doesn't strike out a lot against left-handed pitching, or at least he hasn't so far this season. So that's definitely an improvement for him. I think you're right, especially at the price tag. I think Soler, I think Brian De La Cruz, those are probably my 2 guys on the Miami side of things. But I'm with you on Soler. I mean, a guy hits the baseball that far. It doesn't matter if he's playing at Coors or playing at Lone Depot. The ball's going to get over the left field wall if he gets a hold of it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, outside of Soler, it's just tough to play anybody else in Miami. For me, I mean, Birdie's at 2,600. He's cheap. I assume like maybe Jonathan Davis cracks the lineup at 2,400. You can potentially take a shot on him. But I mean, I'm not going out of my way here. I really think that Soler is the option against Snell that I want to play. All right, let's get on to this. This will be the start of like the main slate on DraftKings, so we'll be able to talk pricing on both sites, not just FanDuel. So we'll start here with Milwaukee at Toronto. 10 total in this game. The Blue Jays a -200 favorite. Julio Teheran is back in our lives. He actually pitched decent last time out. We'll talk about him in just a second. Alek Manoah on the other side of this game. Let's start with Teheran. I stacked against Teheran every which way that I could. His last start, it did not work out. He pitched fantastic for Julio Teheran standards. I'm not for 1 second believing that Julio Teheran is like had this big resurgence and he's going to come out and he's going to dominate games. Am I missing something here, or do you think that's how you're approaching it as well?
No, I feel the same way. I think psychologically it's always a little interesting when you look at a guy's ERA or his FIP and things like that. It looks pretty sterling after one start or a handful of starts, but the larger body of work from Teheran is just not super appealing. If you dive into, like, is there what dramatic change in pitch mix or something that could drive a career resurgence for Teheran against left-handed batters? A lot more fastball usage, way less sinker usage. Like, intuitively that makes a lot more sense as a pitching coach. It's more the changeup than he's featured in the past, but man, the velo's not great. He's a guy that he just has not had great command in recent years. And you look at like 2020, the last year that we have StatCast, where he met StatCast criteria. I mean, this guy was as blue as the North Pole. I mean, first percentile in xERA, x batting average, x slugging, barrel percentage, K percentage, whiff percentage, walk percentage was 28th percentile. Like that doesn't change overnight for me. So I think Julio Teheran's got to put together another 3, 4, 5 starts for me before I'm really going to start taking this seriously. I mean, there's better options, and we've seen time and time again that Julio Teheran is the ultimate fade. So I'm still of that mindset until proven otherwise. I'll tip my cap if I get burned again.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel. I will say one thing. He did, like you mentioned, throw a sinker a lot. The Giants are terrible against sinkers. Just something to kind of put in the back of your head and remember when we're thinking about the Giants and maybe facing a guy that's going to use a sinker a lot. I'll say this, right? Julio Teheran, he had a strikeout per 9, 25% K rate in that game. He still only had an 8% swinging strike rate. There is a lot of regression to that number. They just didn't hit him hard. Like his exit velocity in that game was like 89. Like that's really low for what he's had here over the last like 6-7 years of his career. So I'm not buying it. And if he burns me, like you said, I'm just going to own it and move on to the next slate. I'll probably stack against him again. I just don't believe in it. Toronto's a fantastic offense. I think this is a spot where we're not going to worry about like them hitting him hard. I think it's just going to happen. And honestly, a little concerned because Chapman and Merrifield and these guys struggle a little bit with like sinkers, but Vlad hits them hard. Bichette hits them hard. Brandon Belt hits them hard. Springer hits them hard. So I'm not too concerned. I'm definitely stacking against Toronto today. Alek Manoah on the other side of this game, he's 6,900. He's been all over the place. He can't throw strikes. His command is it's terrible. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the easiest way to put it. He just cannot throw strikes. His command, he's really struggling. Like, I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know if it's the pitch clock. I don't know if it's something mechanic, but 6.5 xFIP, 15% walks with 18% Ks. I can't play him against anybody right now until he kind of gets this figured out.
No arguments for me. I wouldn't play Manoah last year in any situation either. I just never really believed in this guy's stuff. I think when you're good against half of the platoon split and you're worse than league average, which he has been against left-handed batters the last couple of seasons, you're sort of walking a tightrope. And this season we've seen, like you mentioned, that the command has taken a little bit of a hit. I'm with you. I don't know if it's a pitch clock thing. I don't know if it's just, guys getting more and more tape on him and just making life more difficult. Now he's in his own head and he's more scared to go into the strike zone. But the stuff is still decent. It's just he reminds me a little bit of a guy like Jack Flaherty, like some of these guys who come up, they're heralded top prospects or guys who burst on the scene and they have a lot of success, and no one's really challenged them or made them refine some of the vulnerabilities in their game. And now opposing hitters are punishing him pretty much every time he goes out there. I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. You look at the first pitch strike percentage. Like, this is the number one thing that I look at when evaluating pitchers. 54% on the season is just atrocious. Last 3 games, 50%, 43%, 39%. Like, it's just not going to get it done. That number needs to be far closer to 60, preferably on the higher side of 60. So I think as long as that happens, righties, lefties, everyone's just going to keep having a field day with this guy.
All right, let's talk bats. I don't typically stack the Brewers, but when you have a guy that is struggling with command like Manoah is, I mean, we look at his last 4 starts and he's walked at least 4 guys in 3 of those 4 starts. I mean, this is the type of guy you want to stack against. When you're walking guys at that high a clip and the command is struggling, you leave pitches out over the plate. So I don't think it's statistically like the best stack you're going to get today. But I think you have to have some interest here in, a potential full game stack. I like Milwaukee alone. I wish Adames wasn't hurt because I would absolutely love him in this spot. It's concussion. So I don't know when he is like realistically allowed to come back. But I think it's Saturday, if I remember reading it correctly. But yeah, I love this spot for Milwaukee. Again, it's not going to be pretty. You're not going to love clicking on some of these names, but I think this is a fantastic spot for them today.
I'm with you. I think again, it's full send against Manoah at this point. I think right now, truthfully speaking, if you send Alek Manoah to AAA or AA, I think the guy would struggle. I think he's just out of whack. His approach, like he's been a guy who's had decent stuff, and now that guys are catching on to the stuff a little bit, and he's lost a little bit out of the hand, or guys are picking up pitches a little bit better. He's just never had to be a high IQ guy on the mound, and now he's being exposed in that sense. So I'm with you. Like I think anybody that you want to take with Milwaukee here, I think, especially if you're someone who's doing multiple lineups or entering multiple tournaments, stuff like that, I think it's definitely worth a send. Sending a few Milwaukee guys here.
Yeah, I mean, Tellus would be my favorite. I don't even hate Yelich in this spot. I know he struggled a little bit, but this is a fly ball guy. I always like playing Yelich against fly ball guys. So Yelich and Tellus at the top. Contreras, obviously a catcher. My boy Owen Miller keeps doing his thing. I think he's someone you can definitely take some shots on here at 3,100. And then, like I said, the rest of the lineup with like Winker being out, Adames being out, Urias being out. I mean, at the end of the day, like this isn't going to be the greatest lineup in the world, so it's definitely going to offer some value. I think even Mitchell's out, so we'll have to see what the lineup looks like. We're going to get some value, so it's not going to be hard to pay up for Yelich and Tellus, and honestly, they're not even that expensive. But this is one of those games I might just full on game stack. I know it has a 10 total, and I mean, I think people will be on it in general because of the total, but I mean, Toronto looks fantastic too, so this might be one of those games I get like 4-4 like type builds with game stacks because I just think there's going to be a lot of runs scored.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I don't know if Kiermaier is going to be in the lineup tomorrow, but you look at him at 2,900. I think that's an appealing spot as well. Whether you're going to stack Toronto, or you're going to stack anyone from this game, or you're just looking for an extra outfielder, he's been surprisingly pretty good this season. 947 OPS against right-handed pitching. He's shown some decent pop as well. You'd imagine that we're going to see some regression to the mean at some point, but 2,900, I mean, who am I going to argue with an OPS just south of 1,000 at this point in the season?
Love Vlad in this spot. He's the guy that I like for a home run today. He is just absolutely smoked sinkers here over the last few years. So really like him. And then, I mean, if Brandon Belt, I know he's dealing with like a stomach issue, but if he's in the lineup, he hits sinkers and sliders really well. That's what Toronto's going to rely on a lot here, almost 70% of the time. So like Brandon Belt as a cheap option. The only problem is you can't play Vlad and Belt. So on FanDuel you can, DK you can't. I guess, I mean, yeah, full stack. This is definitely a team I'm targeting. Again, like these lineups, there's a lot of people out on both sides. A lot of people banged up on both sides of this game. So it's not going to be the sexiest lineups, which honestly might potentially lower ownership a little bit in a game that should have a ton of runs scored.
Yeah, someone's going to hit. I mean, you insert major league hitters against this type of pitching. I just feel like you're going to get runs, and if it ends up being cheaper for you, then great. You get some cheaper names in there, and you can build out with some of the stars.
Cincinnati at Boston facing my Red Sox. We got a 10.5 total in this game. There's 3 games today with totals over 10 on this slate. So a lot of runs projected here. We got Red Sox favored by 174. Paxton and Weaver facing off against each other. Luke Weaver, local kid to me, and pitching against my Sox here. Any interest in Luke Weaver against Red Sox?
No, I really like this kid coming up, but he just doesn't have a starter mold for me. I think it's reflected every single year that teams have tried to use him in the starting rotation. Not a great matchup for him here. Enters play with the 5.45 ERA, a 5.29 FIP. The xERA is only a little bit better than that. Too much traffic on the bases for me. I just think there's a lot of ways that things could go south for Weaver in this spot. So I think even at a relatively modest price point, I just don't see any reason to pull the trigger here, especially with Boston being a relatively high contact team.
I will say this about Luke Weaver. You don't want to be a fly ball pitcher in Fenway. I mean, at the end of the day, that's just not what you want to be, and he's a fly ball guy. So I'm going to pass on Weaver. There are a couple pitchers that I like today. We'll get to them eventually. It's one of those weird days where there's a lot of hitting and very little pitching. Paxton on the other side of this game, I mean, 8,500, had 2 decent starts and then really struggled last time out against the Angels. And gave up a couple home runs. Paxton's going to give up home runs. I mean, there's no question about it. He's a fly ball guy that gives up a lot of hard contact. My concern is there's not a ton of strikeouts in this Cincinnati lineup. But again, when we're looking at a day with limiting pitching options, is this a day that we take shots on Paxton?
No, not for me. You look at since May 1st, the Cincinnati Reds against left-handed pitching, they're 6th in OPS. And like you mentioned, 13th in K percentage against left-handed pitching since May 1st. So for me, there's just not a lot of upside with Paxton. And, we can go over this. They're probably a different video, but go over the splits of pitchers getting ahead in the count versus falling behind in the count. And even though Paxton has had some glimmers of hope here, you can see first pitch strike percentage just north of 50%. You mentioned swinging strike percentage on, I believe it was Tehran a couple of games ago we were talking, and you look at Paxton, 10.3%, 9.3%, 8.5%. I don't think he gets the swings and misses tomorrow to make him relevant here, especially at the price point, 9,500 on FanDuel. And I think there's a legitimate shot that Cincinnati could put some runs up on the board against him. So I don't know if there's a ton of upside here, but I think there's definitely a lot of downside.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, when we're looking at this slate, Kirby has a tough matchup against the Yankees. We'll talk about that. I think Hunter Brown's going to be the chalky SP1 type play today. I mean, no one's really going to argue that. Nola has a tough matchup. There's just no standout great pitching on this slate. So if I'm just targeting some strikeouts, Paxton's a guy that can go out and get 5 to 8 strikeouts, score 20 points. I think 20 is actually not terrible on this slate. So that's why I was thinking of him just in general. But again, I don't think there's home run pitchers today. I mean, Hunter Brown is great and he's very talented, but he's coming off of 2 fantastic starts against Oakland. So I mean, that's something that we have to keep in mind. Not saying Minnesota is much better right now than Oakland. But Minnesota is still probably top 10 team overall this season. So we'll talk about it here in a few games. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. Let's talk some bats. Cincinnati bats. Who do you like here against Paxton?
My mind jumped right away to Jonathan India, but I didn't see the price tag, so it makes me a little bit less bullish on him. I think probably hunting for some cheap bats with Cincinnati. I think makes the most sense. I'm pulling up some of the splits here. We can see. I mean, Senzel. I don't know if he's going to be in the lineup, but we can see OPS over 1,000 against left-handed pitching this season. Kevin Newman, Spencer Steer. There's some decent bats in here that I think you'd be able to get at a decent price. It looks like Steers at 3,200 probably would stand out to me. 901 OPS, 250 ISO against left-handed pitching this year. Relatively decent contact hitter as well. K percentage below 20% against southpaws. So I think if I'm looking for one guy from Cincinnati, it's probably Steer.
Matt McClain at shortstop, 3,700. I mean, really just ever since he got called up has just been hitting. Offers some stolen base upside as well. So really like McClain. He's one of the reasons that Cincinnati's actually been pretty decent here recently. Senzel is banged up. If he is back in the lineup, I think you can make a little 3-man stack here. It was knee soreness, so it could just be a thing where he's back in, he's good to go. So don't mind it. I mean, there's some cheap option here for Cincinnati in Boston, and we know Paxton's going to give up 1 or 2 home runs, if not more. He's not going to have a clean game. You're really just, like I was talking with Paxton, is you're really just trying to get some strikeouts here, but he's not going to have a clean start. So McClain, Steer, and then if Senzel's back, I don't have any issues playing any objections playing him. Boston side of this game, I'm with you on Luke Weaver. I just don't know if he's a starting pitcher. He might be a bullpen guy that can go out and throw 1 or 2 full power innings and then just kind of sit down for the rest of the night. We'll see what happens with his career, but fly ball guy. So obviously interest in Devers right off the bat. Yoshida, a guy that hits the ball on the ground a lot. So really like the spot for him. What do you like here for the Red Sox?
Yoshida's my favorite. I think it's my bias a little bit coming through of just I really like guys who have a very patient approach at the plate. And I think when you're facing subpar pitching, elite hitters are going to wait for the pitcher to make a mistake. They don't necessarily need to force their hand early in the count. So I think Yoshida's a great option. Devers, I'm not the biggest fan of at the price tag, but like I'm not going to talk you off of Rafi Devers for the reasons that you mentioned. So I think Yoshida's number one. Devers makes sense. I think I could do Verdugo too at the price tag. So 3,300 for him. I could get behind those three.
Yeah, I mean, Verdugo, another guy hits the ball on the ground a lot. So really, I mean, benefits from this matchup, fly ball guy. So, I mean, really, the Red Sox, they're not a team that hit a lot of home runs because they hit the ball on the ground a lot. So they're all really going to benefit here from a matchup against a fly ball guy in Fenway.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and Verdugo too, like yes, he hits the ball on the ground a lot, but against a pitcher that is going to give up some decent hard contact, Verdugo also has a ton of line drive potential, which at Fenway could be doubles, it could be triples, it could be some RBIs, stuff like that. So I think Verdugo at 3,300, Yoshida at 3,600, probably my two favorites. And then Devers, if you want to get Devers in the lineup for the home run potential, then absolutely. I'm not gonna try to talk you off of that.
Philadelphia at New York facing the Mets, 9 total in this game. Philly's a 120 favorite. We got Nola going up against Carrasco. Aaron Nola, 9,100 here on DraftKings. I mean, one of the most interesting, like we've had some pitchers this year where it's just like, what is going on? Corbin Burns comes to mind off the top of my head. And Nola is one of those guys. This guy, an elite pitcher for years, and he's just struggling. He just can't keep the ball in the ballpark. Granted, he's faced some tough offenses. He's been in some tough ballparks here recently, but I mean, great ballpark upgrade here going to New York, facing a Mets team that, I mean, they're still a top 10 team in baseball against right-handed pitching. They are a team that has a high WRC plus. They don't strike out. They put the ball in play. I think today we have to take shots on Aaron Nola. Even in this tough matchup, it's more of, I mean, he's a guy that is going to get 95 plus pitches if he's pitching well. And I mean, how many other guys are going to do that today?
I mean, you got no arguments from me. You look at Aaron Nola. The one thing you do know about him, like you said, he's gonna get deep into the game. He's gone at least 6 innings in every start dating back to April 16th. The start that snapped that streak on April 11th, he went 5 2/3. So he's going to have every opportunity to get deep in the game, which of course means for counting stats, he's going to have more opportunities for strikeouts. So even if the strikeout percentage is low for the game, just the fact that he's going to face 25 to 30 batters here, I think just gives him a decent amount of upside. And the Mets, I don't disagree with you, but like against right-handed pitching, they've just been kind of met. You know, they're 11th in OPS against right-handed pitching during the month of May. They're 15th in ISO. So like if Aaron Nola has a decent amount of luck on balls in play, I think there's a real opportunity that you see him get into the 7th or 8th inning in this spot. His release point was off a little bit in the season. He's still not getting ahead in the count the way he did last year, but we've seen it start to come around a little bit the last 2 starts, 72% and 71% first pitch strike percentage. I know Atlanta got to him a little bit in that game, but I think we're starting to see Nola turn a corner a little bit. I think the fact that he's cheaper than Hunter Brown here, I think I'd much rather have Aaron Nola in this spot than Hunter Brown. So I'd be willing to roll the dice on him.
Yeah, I mean, I think my main lineup probably is going to be Brown Nola, but I mean, a lot can change from now till then. But Carlos Carrasco on the other side of this game, I mean, just not Carlos Carrasco of 5 years ago, I think is the best way to put it. I mean, this guy still, he could go out and throw quality starts, but just not a high upside guy. His strikeout rate's around 13% on the season, walk rate's around 10.5. 6.1 xFIP. I mean, just can't get guys out. And I mean, that's not the guy you want facing a Philly lineup that has a very top heavy lineup.
I agree. Carrasco last season, it felt like he was teetering on the point where it's like, okay, man, like time to hang it up. He was pretty damn good against weak opponents, but he got lit up against some of the better teams on his schedule. The Phillies, I don't know if they qualify as one of the better teams on the schedule, but like you said, they at the top of the order, they have the ability to do just as much damage as anyone else. So I think that definitely presents a lot of concerns. I think at 7,500, like if you just want to pray for some good batted ball luck, maybe, but the strikeout potential really isn't there. And I mean, Philly's starting to have some better at bats. I know the power hasn't come around as a whole lineup, but the OPS has been decent. They're working the count a little bit more as a unit. They're having better at bats, so it's tough. But I do think if you're taking a stab on one guy down ballot, or with a cheaper price tag here, I could do some mental gymnastics and talk myself into some cookie in this spot.
I mean, I wish you the best. I like Philly here, and like this is just a completely different lineup with Harper back. It offers lineup protection to guys like Schwarber and Castellanos and Turner, where maybe you could pitch around one of those guys if you get an out or two to start the game sometimes. So Harper being back in the lineup is just huge, and honestly, I love this spot for Philly. I think this is a spot where if this game was in Philadelphia, they'd be my top stack on the slate. The fact that they're in Citi Field worries me a little bit because of the ballpark, but I mean, Schwarber and Harper can hit it out of anywhere. So I definitely don't mind getting some exposure here. Probably end up with them more of like a secondary type stack team just because of pricing and how pitching is going to play out today. But I definitely have interest in this team just overall.
Yeah, I don't have any very logical reasons to talk you off of it. I mean, if you're taking a stab on Cookie, I think you're hoping that he's going to replicate the approach that he had in his last start against the Cubs. Got ahead in the count a lot, but he also had some good batted ball luck in that game as well. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think. I wouldn't bet on it, but like if you end up filling up your lineup with too many hitters, you don't have enough dollars left over. Like if you're needing a cheap pitcher, I think Carrasco would be my preference over guys like Tehran, Siebel, Clark Schmidt. I would take a stab on Cookie before those other guys.
Yeah, I mean, I have interest, man. We'll see how it plays out, but definitely interest in Philadelphia. The Mets side of this game, I mean, I like Nola. Pete Alonso just keeps hitting everything out of the ballpark, up to 20 home runs on the season. Good to see him. Like, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a bounce back, but he did struggle at times last year. It's good to see him at 20 home runs by the end of May. I mean, as a Mets organization, you have to be really pumped about seeing Alonso hitting the ball the way that he is. Lindor, another guy that's been hitting the ball well. His advanced stats are way better than like his surface stats, so that's always a good thing because there's always some positive regression there. Not a team I'd stack. If you want to one-off like Alonso, I'm not going to say no. He's hitting everything out of the ballpark. Nola is a guy that gives up some home runs. I mean, the pricing is tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying the New York tax, I feel like, and just, I mean, some of these brand names like Alonso and Lindor are just always going to be high no matter how they're seeing the ball at any given moment. But I agree with you, man. I like Pete Alonso. I think it's cool if you're a New York Mets fan to see his progression. Came in the league as just a guy who can hit home runs, and he struck out a ton, and you thought you were going to put up with that. But he's really molded himself into a guy who just has a really nice all-around approach at the plate, which I think gives him a higher floor than a lot of people would have suggested maybe 3 years ago. So I like Alonso as a one-off as well. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around any type of stack with the New York Mets, especially against Nola. But just as a whole, like the New York Mets just don't feel like they ever fire on all cylinders. They don't feel like a team that you could put 4 or 5 in the line in a lineup and end up with some good results. It feels like Alonso's driving a lot of the traffic, or Lindor, or like McNeil. Like one or two guys has a big day that gets them enough runs to put them in a position to win. But I know Alvarez has been swinging the bat well, Alonso, like you said, but I can't justify 3 or 4 of those guys in any DFS lineup.
Kick off the new year with new gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Ray have you covered from the sun to the slopes with premium polarized shades, customizable snow goggles, and much more. Shady Ray is an independent sunglasses company that offers a world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures. That's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by the lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair. No questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after your purchase. With Shady Rays, you can look good and feel good. To date, they have donated over 20 million meals to fight hunger with Feeding America. If you don't love them, exchange them for a new pair or return them free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop with Shady Rays. Their team always has your back. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the new year. Go to shadyrays.com, use code RotoGrinders for 50% off 2 pairs or more of Polaroid sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 200,000 people. We got Minnesota at Houston, a game that's really interesting on this slate. One of the lowest totals at 8. Astros a 178 favorite. We got Brown and Varland facing off against each other. Louis Varland, he's decent, man. He really is. I'm really interested to see how this kid plays out over the next 2 or 3 years. Very young. I think he's like 24 or 25. Very active fastball, very good command, top 100 prospect in all of baseball, above average slider, generates swinging strikes at every level so far. He struggled last year in the majors, and I think he started 4 or 5 games, but went back to AAA to start the year, pitched great. Went, in Major League Baseball this year, he's pitched good. Are we taking shots on Louis Varland against Houston, or is this offense just too good to play a guy against them?
No, I think absolutely. I think I like Louis Varland a lot in this spot. I think I'm probably going to end up on the Twins money line in some capacity, whether it's a first 3, first 5, or a full game tomorrow. Varland's going to make mistakes. I mean, he's given up a decent amount of hard contact this year. You can go look at his Savant, 6th percentile in barrel rate, 25th percentile in hard hit percentage, 21st percentile average exit velocity. When he misses, he tends to miss in the middle third of the plate, which is obviously problematic, but he's going to put pressure on teams to make solid contact against him. And I know Houston's been playing better baseball as of late. I still think the bottom of the order is relatively weak for Houston. And I think, again, we've talked about the slate doesn't have a ton of premier pitching. I would much rather have Louis Varland at 8,800 in this spot than I would Hunter Brown at almost 11,000. I think Hunter Brown is overpriced, like you said, based off his recent matchups. And as much as Minnesota has been struggling, I just feel like there's a lot of reasons to expect negative regression from Hunter Brown. And I think there's opportunities for Louis Varland to put together a pretty nice performance in this one, or at least bail himself out with a decent number of strikeouts. So at 8,800, I think it's a pretty solid play.
Minnesota does have the second highest strikeout rate in baseball against right-handed pitching. They just keep striking out. So, I mean, I think Brown, I prefer him over Varland. I do like Varland, though. I think, like I said, I'm very excited to see how this kid kind of shapes up over the next few years, because again, very active fastball, very good slider, above average command. And I mean, that is one thing people overlook. When you have a guy with good command, it's huge. I know you mentioned a lot of first pitch strike stuff. 65.7% of the time, this guy gets ahead of counts. So that's huge. That is a massive number. Or 57.3%. I was reading the wrong one, but still very high number. That's above average. Good stuff. Other side of this game, again, Minnesota is a team that's striking out at such a high clip right now. They're catching Oakland. They're striking out so much. Obviously, I mean, not perfect matchup. Buxton, Correa, Gallo. You love to see Gallo in the lineup because you're like, he's either going to home run or he's going to strike out. I mean, his strikeout rate is just so high. They've been hitting Julian second. This dude has a 35% K rate as well. Buxton, huge strikeout rate. Correa, big strikeouts. Kirilloff, big strikeouts. I mean, we look at this kid's stuff, almost a 12% swinging strike rate, 28% Ks. He's overpriced. I'm not going to argue. That's the one downside to Hunter Brown today. But we don't have another guy that is capable of striking out 10+ guys on the slate. So, I mean, he's default SP1 for me today. And I love going against the grain. I'll play some stuff where it's against the grain, but I'm not going to fade a guy that generates ground balls and strikeouts against a team that's struggling with strikeouts right now.
Yeah, that's the one part that you can't argue against. You mentioned that Minnesota's catching up to Oakland. Minnesota's 30th in strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching during the month of May, Oakland 29th. So they are definitely doing their best to make up some ground. Hunter Brown, 10 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts going backwards his last 3 starts, facing a team that's striking out more than any team in baseball against right-handed pitching. I'm not I can't dispute that, right? Like Hunter Brown should be a lock for 6+ strikeouts, probably 7 strikeouts tomorrow. So yeah, I get the appeal. I just think you're probably gonna have a lot of people looking at this tomorrow thinking it got to be Hunter Brown, right? Like have to have Hunter Brown in the lineup. So if you want to take that approach and then try to be different somewhere else down your roster, I think that makes sense. But I think Louis Varland has a pretty nice performance tomorrow. I think Hunter Brown, he can make mistakes. Like Minnesota is capable of hitting the ball hard if you make mistakes. It's a matter of, how dialed in is Hunter Brown going to be. Personally, I would not be surprised if he does not finish 6 innings tomorrow. I know he's 7 innings, 6 innings his last 2 starts, but I would not be surprised to see one of these like Hunter Brown 5 innings inefficient type of games tomorrow.
Oh, I wouldn't be shocked either. I mean, we at the end of the day, we got to remember he's still very young.
Yeah.
Started a little bit last year. I think he started a couple games, worked a little bit out of the bullpen last year. But I mean, realistically, if you take away his 2 starts last year, he has 10 major league starts this year. And I mean, we have to remember that he's still young, but I mean, he's a top 50 prospect in baseball. He has one of the best curveballs in baseball right now. I don't think anyone can really argue that. And he has an electric fastball. And I mean, that's the recipe for strikeouts. His issue is sometimes he'll get wild, like you mentioned. Against the Giants earlier this year, I think he walked 5. Detroit, his first start this year, walked 3 or 4, really struggled in that game. Minnesota earlier this year, he absolutely dominated them. So, I mean, the upside is there. Again, like it's apples and oranges today. He's just in a great spot. And, I mean, you could play Varland and Brown on the same team together today on DraftKings if you wanted to, because I think this is going to be one of the lower scoring games on the slate.
Yeah,
all right,
I agree. I agree. Probably on the under, probably on the Twins for me, but I think you're right. I think we're talking along the same vein here.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games you're just like refreshing sports books and hoping that like the over gets bet to like 8.5, and you can just be like, all right, I feel so much better now. But
absolutely.
All right, Minnesota bats. Anything standing out to you here against Brown?
No, I mean, I think you go big or you go home, right? Like, I mean, you want Byron Buxton. You want somebody who's going to be able to put the ball over the fence if they do get a mistake pitch, and I think Buxton is definitely fits that mold of what you would be looking for. But I think you should be looking at hitters everywhere else on the slate. I think this is the one game where you're probably looking at a pitcher's duel. I think if it's not a pitcher's duel, it's probably going to be 1 or 2 mistakes out over the middle of the plate that end up leading to a few runs. So I think you're looking for what is it? What's the expression? A needle in a haystack. Right here, trying to like pick the hitter that's going to capitalize on a mistake. I think you take the pitchers here. You look for hitters elsewhere against guys like Luke Weaver, Alek Manoah, Carrasco, Tehran. I think that would be my approach.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have interest in like a hedge stack. Like if I'm going to play Brown as much as I want to play Brown, I definitely have interest in a hedge stack. They got Royce Lewis back, guy that tore his ACL last year. So he's back with the team now. He's going to be a good addition to this team. Grades out as an above average hitter. So yeah, I mean, it would be a hedge stack for me.
Yeah, Lewis is only 2,800 too. So
yeah, that's always nice. On the Houston side, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. We could see Varland maybe struggle a little bit in this spot, but I think like the one thing you always have to remember about Houston is they're just patient. They walk at a very high clip. They have good at bats. It feels like every time they're at the plate. What are your thoughts here?
People disagree with me, and I 100% understand where they're coming from because Houston has such a long track record. I just feel like this is fundamentally a different lineup than it has been in recent seasons, and they've been better as of late. So I'm sort of in a wait and see approach, but I think this lineup is exploitable. Like I still think you have Yordan Alvarez, you have Kyle Tucker, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for on the pitching side here to exploit Houston. I think if you're going with anyone, it's Alvarez. It's a guy who does not miss mistake pitches. He puts mistake pitches into the third deck of whatever venue he happens to be playing in that night. So I know he's at 4,400, but I think this is a guy who has legitimate 2 home run potential in a spot like this against a guy who has a tendency 2 miss in the middle third of the plate. That would be my guy for Houston in this spot.
All right, we got New York at Seattle, the lowest total on the slate here, 7.5. Mariners a 148 favorite. Schmidt and Kirby facing off against each other. Any interest here in Clark Schmidt?
No, I think the preseason reports of him developing a cutter and refining his pitch makes, his mechanics a little bit, I think have been wildly overblown. There's been nothing that has shown up on any tape or really in any game results that have proven otherwise. He gave up 7 runs a couple starts ago to the Rays, who I know obviously are having a fantastic season, but he's been super volatile. And if you go look at some of the deeper metrics here, like he just seems scared to attack certain lineups. And I know he doesn't have the toughest matchup in the world against the Seattle Mariners, but they've been swinging the bats better. Julio Rodriguez hit a ball out on Monday nights. It's just not a spot that I like for Schmidt really whatsoever here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Schmidt in general. I want to see him work out, and as a Red Sox fan, I don't want to see him work out. I will say this, right? At the end of the day, he's been above average against right-handed pitching. If Seattle rolls out that very right-handed heavy lineup, I think you take shots on Schmidt. If they roll out a left-handed lineup, I think I'm out. Like, I want to see what the lineup looks like because, I mean, they can go very right-handed heavy. They can get 4 or 5 lefties in there. So Schmidt's been good against righties. You just can't get a left-handed hitter out.
I was just gonna say against Herman to begin the series, they had Crawford, Kelnick, and Riley and Trammell. So they have 4 lefties in the lineup, but I think they'd be shooting themselves in the foot. I completely agree. Like if you get 6 or 7 righties in there, then it's a totally different conversation. It's just if you see 4 lefties, 2 of them are going to find a way to do some damage against Schmidt, and it's going to derail the whole night.
George Kirby on the other side of this game, kind of the opposite pitcher that we like to take against the Yankees. We will really want like overpowering strikeout guys against the Yankees. He's not that type of pitcher. They do strike out a lot. They have a ton of power. I will say this, Rizzo's banged up. Bader, we know he's back on the 10-day IL with a hamstring issue. Stanton, I mean, getting closer to being back, but still not back. So if Rizzo is out of the lineup continuing to deal with like this neck issues, I mean, I don't hate the idea of taking Kirby. You're really just kind of pitching around Judge and maybe Bowers. There's a lot of strikeouts here where he could get a little boost to strikeouts. He's a good pitcher. He's just not a huge strikeout guy. I don't hate Kirby here, depending on the lineup.
I'm with you. I think it's a lineup dependent thing. Kind of miraculously, this month, the Yankees have actually avoided strikeouts at a relatively high clip. Some of that has been matchup dependent. They've still been lit up by guys like Hunter Green and some of the better strikeout pitchers they've seen. But they had some success against Logan Gilbert on Tuesday night. Their 5th fewest strikeouts against right-handed pitching during the month of May. So I think there's a little bit of validity to that. But again, lineup dependent, right? It's the Yankees have a lot more flexibility than a lot of teams in terms of who's going to be in there on a nightly basis. So it might be a high contact lineup one night. We might see certain guys get off days or certain guys get put into the lineup tomorrow. That could take Kirby from being a pass in my book to potentially being someone that you feel like you absolutely have to start.
All right, let's talk bats here. Yankees in Seattle getting a ballpark downgrade. Another reason that I don't hate Kirby, but I mean, obviously, if you want to pay up for Aaron Judge, no one's ever going to tell you no. 17 home runs on the season, a guy that gets on base, it seems like every single game. So his upside is definitely 2 home run games, 3 home run games, his ceiling. I wouldn't even put him past a 4 home run game, but I mean, I don't hate Judge against a low strikeout pitcher in Kirby. It's really hard for me to stack the Yankees right now. The lineup's just not the best lineup in the world.
Yeah, it's Judge for me. If you like Judge, I wouldn't dig too deep into anyone else in this spot, especially against Kirby.
Yeah, and then I mean on the Seattle side, the lefties I think are fine. Again, like Schmidt has really excelled against right-handed hitters this season, 29% Ks, WOBA under 300, ISO under 160. Gives up hard contact, but really just doesn't get blown up by lefties. So or righties. I don't mind the lefties. I don't ever mind playing Julio Rodriguez. But overall, I mean, this might be a spot that Schmidt kind of cracks it into my like lineup builds because of the lineup is just not a great lineup for him or for facing him.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I guess we'll see how the lineup shakes out. I think the one guy that I would absolutely take a really long look at tomorrow is JP Crawford. You mentioned Schmidt's struggles against left-handed batters, 210 whip, 354 opponent batting average, which is just ridiculous to even say out loud. But Crawford quietly has had some decent success against right-handed pitching so far this year, 851 OPS. He's walked more than he struck out so far. Was one of those guys who went to Driveline. Driveline's been helping him hit the baseball with more authority when he has been making contact. So I think that's a guy who could probably get you a couple of total bases tomorrow. Could he run into one? I don't know. It's always tough in Seattle, like you mentioned with the ballpark, but I think it's a guy who's a patient approach, could find his way on base, maybe steals a base, potentially scores a run if somebody gets him in. So he's been batting at the top of the order against right-handed pitching a decent amount. I think at 2,900, it's a decent play, especially when you look at some of the more expensive shortstops on the slate, like Bichette at 3,800, Tatis at 3,700, Lindor 3,500. I think that's a decent value to get Crawford in the leadoff spot against Schmidt, if that ends up being the case.
Kelenic has slowed down a little bit since the start of the season, but he's still a good hitter, man. Really kind of exploded onto the scene this year after a lot of people kind of talk bad about him again. Really hyped to talk bad about to really hyped again. I mean, it's interesting when that kind of stuff happens, but it's always fun too. All right, Colorado.
No, I was just gonna say, man, it's always fun to jump on the prospect who's succeeding, but then it seems like it's even more fun for people in that downturn to be like, I told you he sucked type of thing. So good fastball hitter though. I think it's a decent look tomorrow.
We have a fun baseball game here in Arizona. It's 10 total. Diamondbacks a 178 favorite. Is what it sounds like. We got Tommy Henry starting. We'll see how deep he pitches into this game. I assume we'll see a normal kind of workload for him. And then the Nelson Lamet coming back. I don't know why. Like, hey, we are this bad that we don't have anybody in our farm system that we have to go out and pitch Lamet. I don't think he's going to pitch too deep. He did throw 63 pitches in a rehab start, so maybe 75 pitches here. Maybe 50 because he doesn't make it out of the first inning. But hey, do you have any interest in Lamet going up against Arizona?
No,
my job is just to ask. I mean, you can easily say no. Chief Justice is the king of a very fast no, and this is definitely one of those spots where you can just say no. Lamet is terrible.
Yeah, just a hard and fast no. I gotta take a page from Chief. I know he's a lot more decisive with his decision making, so I'll work on that for the next time we get on this show.
Yeah, walk rate almost as high as a strikeout rate. Guy that gives up power to both sides of the plate. I mean, Arizona is one of my favorite, if not my favorite stack on the entire slate today. No interest in Lamet. The one thing like you have to remember too is this is a bullpen that you can definitely target. Colorado just in general, they're really close to a bottom 5 bullpen. So we'll talk about the bats in a minute. Henry, I mean, he came in pitch relief. Was it 4 or 5 days ago? And then now he's back to starting. He started a few games here recently. I don't know what to do, but I don't think I want to play him. I like if you just want to full on punt, he would. I think he'd be the guy that you'd full on punt with. Just because I mean this lineup's not the best lineup in the world right now. Henry's not the best pitcher by any means. But I mean outside of Grichuk and Chris Bryant, you're really not too concerned with the lineup overall. Ballpark kind of stinks. I think if you're just going to say, hey, I'm going to play an SP2 and I'm just going to full on punt, he's the guy you would take a shot on and just stack bats and hope it works out. But I'm not probably doing that. I'm just saying if you were, he'd probably be the guy to do it with.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is a pass for me overall. I think if you're gonna do anything here, it's the bats. But again, it's tough to really know what you're gonna get into here because, like you said, he appeared on the 27th. So how deep in this game is he gonna go? Lefties have had a lot of success against him so far. 344 batting average. The 754 FIP is obviously very ugly. Literally no swings and misses. 5.6 K percentage against left-handed batters this year. So I think you can find somebody that you want to talk yourself into, but I think there's better options a lot other places on the slate. Even if you're just looking at the main slate, the night games here, I think there's a lot better opportunities to not drive yourself crazy trying to just find someone for the sake of finding someone.
So I will say, like, Henry's the guy that they've used when they have like a stretch where they need like a fifth or sixth starter type of guy. So I mean, it was probably just a bullpen day for him, and he came out and he threw 1 inning, I think. He threw like 10
1 and
pitches.
third. Yeah. He faced 5 batters. So
yeah, I mean, I think he's good to go. I think he throws, if he's pitching well, 85 plus pitches here. If he's struggling, probably in the 70s. Kind of his MO that we've seen so far, but he's not a great pitcher. I mean, low strikeouts, high walks. I will say his swinging strike rate is a lot better than his strikeout rate. He has some strikeouts in there. He just doesn't finish guys off. He doesn't have a finished pitch. I mean, that's been a thing for him ever since he was recruited. He really kind of just needs to develop a finish pitch. He would be so much better if he had that like out pitch. I said finish pitch. I meant out pitch. Like if he had that out pitch, I think he'd be a guy that we'd see, really kind of pitch better. He just needs an out pitch. All right, let's talk bats here. Anything stand out to you for the Rockies?
No, again, I think just if you want to wait for a lineup and you see lefties against Henry, I think it's a decent bet, especially if you get someone cheap. But I think there's so many other hittable pitchers on the slate. I would be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean Crone out of the lineup, still on the IL. Blackman on the bereavement list. Grichuk as a one-off. I don't hate Grichuk. He's 3,900 on DraftKings. He's a guy that throughout his career has always had power against left-handed pitching, so I don't mind taking some shots on Grichuk. Chris Bryant on DraftKings is down to 4,400. I think the price tag is nice for him. Good ballpark. Lefty-righty matchup. But yeah, I mean, Arizona going to the other side of this game. Colorado, like I said, very close to a bottom 5 bullpen. They're borderline. I love the stack. I mean, Arizona is just a team that I'm just going to 5-man stack on DraftKings, 4-man stack on FanDuel. Love this spot for Arizona today.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Nothing to add. You're like, yeah, I'm with you. We're playing Arizona.
I mean, it's good logic. It makes sense. Like, Chiefs good at the hard no. I'm good at the hard. All right, like that sounds great. Let's just lock it in.
All right, let's play the morning grind game, and then we'll get out of here using DraftKings pricing and scoring. As always, under 8,000, under 8,000 to get 6 or more strikeouts. I mean, nobody, but hey, go ahead. Who do you got?
Actually, I'm going to defer to you real quick. I had FanDuel open, so you go ahead real quick.
Oh, see, this is a bad defer. Bad defer for you. I'm going to take Clark Schmidt because he's the only option to get 6 or more strikeouts today, especially if that lineup is right-handed heavy. Clark Schmidt, yeah. Thank you for deferring. I always have to choose somebody else, but I like going first. That's fun. I should go first more often.
Under 8K to get 6Ks. So Carrasco's not getting there. We're not getting there with Henry or Lamet. Man, it's I guess I have to go with Tehran. Like,
see, the defer was terrible here.
It was. This is what I get. This is what I get for not having the tab open. I'm sitting here on FanDuel, and then I end up with an L because there's absolutely no chance that Tehran's getting 6 strikeouts tomorrow either. So, but I'll roll the dice. Maybe Tehran has somehow another great start tomorrow, surprises everybody. That's my guy. That's my other pick because I can't pick Schmidt.
Over 8K to score under 15. Who's your bust today?
I think it's Paxton. I think Paxton gets hit around.
All right. Man, I guess Varlin against the patient Astros, even though I don't mind taking some shots on them. Over 4,000 to hit a home run today. Who do you got going yard?
I have Yordan Alvarez going yard.
I like it. I'm going to go Gary L from Arizona. Just a guy that has smashed right-handed pitching this season. Lamette's terrible. Give me Gary L at 4,400. One of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Under 4K to get 2 hits. Who's your cheap bet that you like today?
Under 4K to get 2 hits. I'll go with Jeff McNeil.
I like that one. I'm trying to pick. I think I'm gonna stick with my hot bat right now. Give me Owen Miller for Milwaukee. Really like him against Miller. Might walk 3 times though. That's the only downside. Stack to score 6 or more runs today. Who's getting 6 today?
Milwaukee.
Like it. I'll go Arizona. Nick, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, man. I think the number one thing, like I'm more in the sports book, like straight betting space than I am the DFS stuff. I dabble in the DFS, but I think that the way I evaluate pitchers, the number one thing I look for is just first pitch strike percentage. I think there's a reason you look at since the early 2000s, teams have gotten much, much better at it. I think a lot of it is just focus. Pitchers understand getting ahead in the count gives them better opportunity to succeed. The best teams in baseball, the Tampa Bay Rays, have made it a personal goal to break the MLB record for first pitch strike percentage for a season. So I think when you're looking at pitchers, especially on a slate like this, where you might have to go bottom of the barrel and take a shot at one of these cheaper guys, like guys who get ahead in the count, I think that give themselves the best opportunity to maybe have a surprise day here and there, even if they don't have the best stuff. So that's my food for thought that I'll leave everybody with.
All right, that's going to wrap it up here for Wednesday. Appreciate Keith hosting the last 2 days. Thank you, Keith. You're the man. We'll be back tomorrow talking some more baseball. Everyone have a fantastic May 31st. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Good luck, everyone.